My name is Marina Hale. I'm 32 years old. And if you ask my family, I'm the difficult one now. Not because I lied. Not because I stole. Not because I dragged innocent people into a mess I created and expected someone else to clean it up. No, I'm difficult because one day, after years of smiling through disrespect and writing checks to keep everyone comfortable, I finally looked at the chaos they were handing me and said the one word they never thought I would. No. This whole disaster started because my parents were celebrating their 30th wedding anniversary, and for one brief, stupid moment, I let myself believe that maybe this trip could be simple. Maybe age had softened them. Maybe time had matured my younger sister. Maybe being generous would feel good instead of expensive in every possible way. That was my first mistake. The second was thinking the phrase family only meant the same thing to them that it meant to me. I work in consulting. I make good money. Not billionaire money, not private jet money, but enough that over the years, my family slowly stopped seeing me as Marina and started seeing me as a solution with a debit card. I was the one who handled emergencies, last-minute deposits, forgotten bills, rushed bookings, school payments, replacement tires, and all the ugly little gaps between what they wanted and what they could actually manage on their own. They never said it that way, of course. Nobody ever does. They wrap it in softer language. You're just better at this. You're so organized. You always know what to do. You're the one we can count on. What they meant was, you'll fix it. You always do. My mother, Cynthia, called me on a Tuesday afternoon while I was between meetings. I was still staring at a slide deck when her name lit up my screen, and the second I answered, I heard it. That syrupy brightness in her voice she uses when she wants something expensive disguised as sentimental. Your father and I are celebrating 30 years this year, she said. We were thinking Cabo. Wouldn't that be lovely? I leaned back in my chair and opened my calendar. Cabo sounds good. When? Late October, 1 week. Just the four of us. You, me, your father, and Talia. Like old times. Like old times. That phrase should have warned me. Nothing in my family was ever like old times in the nostalgic sense. When my mother said it, she meant returning to a structure where everyone's needs flowed toward me and my boundaries, if they existed at all, were treated like attitude problems. Still, I was in a generous mood. My firm had just closed a major contract. My bonus had hit my account the week before, and despite everything, 30 years of marriage still felt like something worth recognizing. My parents were not easy people. Their marriage had not exactly been a fairy tale. But they had stayed together, and some part of me wanted to believe a peaceful trip could happen if I just planned it well enough. I'll book us a private rental, I told her. 4 bedrooms, ocean view. You guys handle your own flights, though. I'm not playing travel agent for everybody. My mother laughed softly. Oh, honey, that's too generous. I want to, I said. It's your anniversary. Then I added, clearly, because I knew I had to. But keep it small, family only. Of course, she said too quickly. Just us. That should have been my third warning. The private rental I found was gorgeous without being obscene. It wasn't some absurd celebrity compound, but it was exactly the kind of place adults could enjoy without stepping on each other's nerves. Oceanfront, white stucco walls, pool, 4 full suites, big kitchen, courtyard, 10-minute walk to the beach. Enough room for privacy, enough luxury to feel special, and enough calm that I could almost picture us behaving like functional people for 7 days. It cost me $8,000 for the week. I read the rental contract line by line before I signed anything. Maximum occupancy, 8 guests. Guest names required 48 hours before check-in. Unauthorized overnight guests could trigger immediate eviction, deposit forfeiture, and full charges regardless of early departure. The property was inside a gated community with private security patrols and a one-strike complaint policy. No parties, no surprise guests, no gray area. I read every word twice. Then I signed. I sent the confirmation to the family group chat. My father, Frank, replied with a thumbs-up emoji, which for him passed as gratitude. My younger sister Talia sent a flood of exclamation points and beach emojis, followed by a voice note I didn't bother opening. My mother sent a paragraph about how touched she was, how meaningful this would be, how special it all felt. Then she added one casual little sentence that made my stomach tighten. I already told your aunt about it. She's so jealous. I stared at the screen. Why would she tell anyone? Why did anyone outside the 4 of us need details about a private anniversary trip I was paying for? I texted back, why did you mention it at all? A minute later, she replied, just chatting. You know how she is, always wants to know everything. I let it go. That was my 4th mistake. 2 weeks before we left, Talia called me. Her voice had that specific fake casual tone she used whenever she was about to slip a problem into my lap and act like it had floated there naturally. So funny story, she said. It never is. She ignored that. Turns out Derek and Kayla were already going to be in Cabo that same week. Small world, right? Derek was Talia's current boyfriend. 6 months in, all confidence and no depth. The kind of man who wore expensive sneakers with the laces still factory-tied because he thought it made him look effortless. He wasn't overtly rude the way some people are. He was worse. He had the smug, parasitic ease of someone who assumes the room will make space for him. Kayla was one of Talia's longtime friends from college. Pretty, loud, always filming something, always turning ordinary situations into content or drama or both. That is a funny coincidence, I said, already hearing the direction this was headed. Yeah, so they booked a cheap Airbnb in town. No big deal. We'll probably just hang out, do a beach day, maybe dinner or something. Sure, I said. But in my head, I was already filling in the rest. The cheap Airbnb would have issues, or it would be too far, or the photos would be misleading, or they'd suddenly feel unsafe, or there'd be a plumbing emergency. And then, somehow, magically, a problem created by other adults would arrive at my feet wearing vacation clothes. So I didn't argue. I just made a note to lock the guest list as soon as possible. 4 names, no additions. 3 days before departure, my mother called again. That same sweet voice. That same tone that always meant she was easing towards something she knew I wouldn't like. There's been a slight change of plans, she said. I closed my eyes. How slight? Talia's friend group wanted to make a whole thing of it, supporting our anniversary. Isn't that sweet? My hand tightened around my phone. How many friends? Oh, just a few. They're getting their own accommodations, of course. They may join dinners or activities. Don't worry. I told everyone you've got it covered. You always do. That sentence hit something dark in me. Got what covered? You know, she said lightly. The planning, the arrangements. You're so good at that. Mom, I said, each word flat, I paid for a 4-person private rental. This is not a group vacation. Oh, honey, don't be dramatic. No one expects you to pay for them. Except I knew that wasn't true. Because in my family, nothing was ever official until the moment it became inevitable. They never asked directly when they could maneuver instead. They preferred creating circumstances that made refusal look cruel. I spent the next 2 days preparing the way some people prepare for a storm they know everyone else will underestimate. I packed light, 1 carry-on, 7 days of clothes, backup chargers, printed reservation copies, screenshots of the contract. Every detail saved twice. And then I did one more thing. Something quiet. Something practical. Something that ended up mattering more than anything else. I called the property management company. The woman who answered sounded efficient, organized, and pleasantly detached. The exact kind of person I trusted. Hi, I said. This is Marina Hale. I need to confirm the guest list and update security notes on my reservation. Of course, go ahead. Only 4 registered guests are authorized. Marina Hale, Cynthia Hale, Frank Hale, and Talia Hale. No one else gets access codes. No exceptions. If additional people show up claiming they're with our party, deny entry and contact me immediately. Understood, she said. We can flag the reservation. Also, I said, can door codes be changed remotely? Yes. Once you check in, you'll have full control in the app. Perfect. I thanked her, hung up, and felt a tiny, unfamiliar sense of calm. For once, I wasn't just hoping things wouldn't go wrong. I was preparing for the moment they did. The night before the trip, I reviewed everything again. Occupancy rules. No parties. No unregistered overnight guests. Security enforcement. Neighbor hotline. Immediate review after complaints. Every line read like a warning from the future. I screenshotted the important sections and saved them in a folder. Then I went to bed. And somehow, despite all of it, some hopeful part of me still believed I might be overreacting. That maybe I was being cynical. That maybe my family would surprise me. They did. Just not in the way decent people do. Denver International Airport on a Friday morning during fall break is its own kind of psychological experiment. Too much noise, too much rolling luggage, too many children crying in opposite directions while adults pretend they aren't close to tears themselves. I got there early for our 10:30 flight, breezed through security thanks to TSA pre-check, grabbed breakfast, and settled near the gate with my laptop. Everything was on time. Everything was smooth. For about 12 minutes. Then I heard Talia's voice. Loud. Careless. Broadcasting itself across the terminal like she thought life was staged for her. Don't worry, she was saying. Marina's paying. She always pays. Once we get there, she'll cave like she always does. I looked up slowly. My parents were by the gate counter with their overstuffed check bags and the exhausted expressions of people who had already made themselves victims before the day had even properly started. That was normal. What wasn't normal was the crowd around them. I counted automatically. My mother, my father, Talia, then Derek, then Kayla, then a tall man I didn't know with a tattoo sleeve and a smug little smirk. Then a blonde woman taking selfies like the terminal was a rooftop bar. Then another guy wearing sunglasses indoors like he thought mystery was a personality. 8 people. 8. My pulse dropped cold. The rental allowed 8 bodies, yes, but only 4 were on my authorized list. If a mob of extra people showed up tied to my reservation, it could still trigger problems, complaints, or outright eviction once they tried to force the issue. And judging by Talia's voice, that was exactly the plan. I stood and walked toward them. Talia saw me first and grinned. with that bright, reckless smile she always used when she knew she'd crossed a line and had decided enthusiasm was an acceptable substitute for permission. "Marina," she said, "you made it. Everyone's here." Everyone. Like this was a surprise party I was supposed to be touched by. The strangers looked at me with that weird, half-recognition people get when they've heard your name attached to resources. Then the tattooed guy stepped forward first. "Oh, you're Marina," he said. "Nice." Talia said I'm probably getting one of the upstairs rooms because I snore. He said it like it was settled, like he was confirming a detail with hotel staff. The blonde woman barely looked at me before asking, "Does the place have a blender? I'm not doing vacation without smoothies." The guy in sunglasses laughed and said, "And are we stocking the fridge first thing or doing a Costco run on your card?" For one full second, the whole terminal seemed to go strangely still around me. Not physically, but internally. That very specific kind of stillness where rage gets so sharp it becomes cold. "Who," I asked very calmly, "are these people?" Talia stepped in fast, grabbing at my elbow like she could pull me into cooperation through touch alone. "This is Nolan, Bri, and Jason," she said. "They're friends from work. When they heard about Cabo, they booked flights too. Isn't that crazy? Everyone wanted to celebrate Mom and Dad." I looked at her, then at Derek, who suddenly found the floor fascinating, then at Kayla, who gave me a thin little smile like she already knew I was about to be made the villain. "I'm not paying for any of them to stay anywhere," I said. Silence. Immediate. Heavy. Nolan's expression flickered. "What?" "The private rental is for 4 people," I said. "My parents, my sister, me. That's it." Talia's fingers tightened on my arm. "Can we talk over here?" I let her drag me a few feet away, though not far enough to give her privacy she hadn't earned. "What are you doing?" I asked. She blinked, like the question itself was unreasonable. "I'm bringing friends to celebrate Mom and Dad." "You told them I agreed to this." "They already bought tickets." "You told them where they were sleeping." She lifted her chin. "Because you are paying." "No," I said, "I'm not." Her expression hardened instantly. "Come on, Marina, don't do this here." "You already did this here." She rolled her eyes. "We can squeeze people in for a few nights. Then they'll figure out a hotel or whatever." I stared at her. "A few nights? Why are you making this so dramatic?" "Because this is exactly what you do," I said quietly. "You make irresponsible plans, leave out key details, and then expect me to fix it because everyone's already in motion and saying no would make me look cruel." She laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. "Wow, tell me how you really feel." "I am." Before she could answer, my father came over. His jaw was already set. That look on his face, the one that had shadowed so much of my life, said he had already decided I was wrong, and now he was simply here to impose order. "What's the holdup?" he asked. "I'm explaining that Talia's extra guests are not staying at the private rental." His whole face shifted. Not surprise. Annoyance. Like I was creating trouble by naming a problem someone else had caused. "Don't be difficult, Marina," he said. "We'll make it work." "No," I said, "we won't." "No," I said, "we won't." My father stared at me like I'd just spoken to him in a language he didn't approve of. The noise of the terminal kept moving around us, rolling suitcases, boarding calls, someone's toddler crying near a coffee stand. But inside that little circle of family tension, everything sharpened. Every expression, every breath, every pair of curious eyes drifting toward us from nearby seats. "The contract is clear," I said. "The villa has occupancy rules, registered guest rules. I booked it for 4 people, not this." My father's face went red almost instantly. "You are successful because of us," he snapped. "Your education, your opportunities, everything you have. We made you who you are." That line, that exact line, it wasn't new. It never was. My family had a whole little script library they pulled from whenever I stopped behaving like a cheerful utility device. Gratitude, sacrifice, family, debt, obligation. They wrapped entitlement in parental language and waited for me to fold. But something in me was too tired this time. Maybe it was the airport lights. Maybe it was hearing Talia tell strangers I would cave. Maybe it was the simple, humiliating clarity of watching people I had never met speak to me like my money was already theirs. Whatever it was, something old and automatic in me finally failed to engage. "My money," I said evenly, "is not a family resource pool." My father took a step closer. "Everything you have, we gave you. You gave me a childhood," I said. "That's the minimum requirement when you choose to have kids. It does not buy you open access to my bank account 30 years later." Talia let out a loud, disbelieving laugh. "Wow, you really practiced that, huh?" I ignored her. My mother appeared beside my father, already wearing the expression she used when she wanted the room to see her as the wounded one. Her eyes were wet, her mouth trembled. It would have been convincing if I hadn't watched that same performance my entire life. "Marina," she said softly, "I don't even recognize you right now." I looked at her. That one almost got me. Not because it was true, but because that line had teeth. It reached for something old in me, something little and obedient that still wanted to be known by my mother as good. Then I remembered the phone call, the sweet voice, the slight change of plans. The part where she told everyone I had it covered, and the softness in me hardened again. I became realistic, I said. That's different. A silence dropped over the group. Not full silence. Airports are never silent, but the kind of silence inside human conflict where nobody likes the next available truth. One of the strangers, Jason, I think, shifted awkwardly and cleared his throat. Hey, he said, trying to grin. We didn't mean to cause drama. I turned to him. Then you should have booked a hotel like an adult instead of assuming somebody else would absorb the consequences of your poor planning. His mouth opened, then closed. Derek rubbed the back of his neck and gave me a weak little shrug, like maybe charm could still save him. We can totally just all make it work, he said. It's vacation. People improvise. Not in a gated private rental with a signed contract in my name, I said. Talia's face twisted. You're being selfish. And there it was. The word they always use when the person being exploited starts using complete sentences. Around us, several travelers were now openly watching. A woman near the Cinnabon had stopped pretending not to listen. A teenage boy in a hoodie had one AirPod halfway out. Even the gate agent kept glancing over with that careful airline expression that meant she was tracking whether this was about to become her problem. Good, I said. Talia blinked. What? Good. Let them watch. Maybe somebody here will learn what boundaries look like. She looked like I had slapped her. My mother made a small, wounded sound in the back of her throat. Marina, she whispered, please don't do this on our anniversary trip. I smiled at that, but there was no warmth in it. You mean the trip I paid for? I asked. The one you quietly converted into a group vacation and then expected me to sponsor out of embarrassment? My father's voice rose. That's enough. No, I said again. Actually, it isn't. That startled even me, because I usually stopped before that point. I usually felt the pressure, saw the public discomfort, registered my mother's tears, and pivoted into damage control. I would lower my voice, soften the edge, offer a compromise, save the scene, save them from themselves. But I was done saving scenes they created on purpose. Talia stepped close enough that I could smell her perfume. You are really going to do this? She hissed. You're going to leave Mom standing here crying in an airport because you want to make a point? She's not standing on a cliff, I said. She's standing 20 feet from a Hudson News and about 40 feet from a row of empty seats. She'll survive. My father pointed at me. That attitude is exactly why nobody stays close to you. The words hit harder than I expected. Not because they were true. Because they were designed to wound. My father had always known where to aim when he wanted obedience. He wasn't imaginative, but he was consistent. If anger didn't work, he went for isolation. If authority didn't work, he went for shame. For one awful second, I felt 12 years old again, being told I was too cold, too sharp, too hard to love because I had noticed something unfair and said it out loud. Then I looked at Talia standing behind him with 5 extra people and a boyfriend and an expectant little smirk, and the feeling passed. Maybe, I said, or maybe people stop sticking around when they realize I'm no longer financing the privilege. My mother gasped, like I'd said something obscene. Talia's eyes narrowed into glittering slits. You know what your problem is, she said. You always think you're smarter than everyone. No, I said, I just plan farther ahead. That landed. I could see it, because planning was the one thing they all secretly resented. Not the act itself, the proof it created. Planning meant memory. Planning meant receipts. Planning meant I could point to the moment where choices were made and say, no, this didn't just happen. You built it. The boarding area speakers crackled overhead with a pre-boarding announcement, and for one surreal second, the entire fight had to pause so an airline voice could politely remind everyone about zones and carry-on luggage. I took a breath, then adjusted the strap of my bag. I'm not discussing this again, I said. The villa is for the people I booked it for. Nobody else is staying there. If your friends want to come to Cabo, they can find their own accommodations. Nolan gave a humorless laugh. Most of the decent places are already booked. It's peak season. I looked at him. That sounds like a problem you should have solved before getting on a plane. Talia made a noise between a scoff and a growl. You can't seriously be walking away right now. Yes, I said, I can. I turned. My father barked my name. Marina, get back here. I didn't even look over my shoulder. I'm not under your command anymore, Dad. And then I walked. Not dramatically. Not fast. Just steadily. Which somehow felt more shocking than if I'd stormed off. Each step away from them felt unnatural at first. Like I was crossing some invisible electric fence that had surrounded my family my entire life. Don't embarrass them. Don't upset them. Don't leave them to deal with their own consequences in public. Don't make their discomfort visible. But I kept walking anyway. My pulse was hammering so hard it felt like heat in my throat, yet underneath it, under the adrenaline, under the anger, under the old reflexive guilt, there was something else. Relief. Small. Fierce. Unmistakable. I didn't stop until I reached the quiet side of the terminal near the airline lounge. Then I pulled out my phone, opened my email, found the reservation confirmation. Read the policy one more time. Maximum occupancy. Authorized guests only. Immediate action if unauthorized people attempted access. I stared at the screen for a second, Then I texted the property manager. Change of plans. Only I will be checking in initially. Remove all other names from current access authorization until further notice. No one else is permitted entry without my direct approval through the app. 30 seconds later, she replied. Understood. Reservation flagged. Access restricted to your name only. Updated codes will activate at 3 p.m. local time. You may add a guest later if needed. I exhaled slowly. Then I made 2 more calls. First, I canceled the group transportation someone had apparently arranged under my reservation details without asking me. A 15-passenger van had been booked for airport pickup. I paid the cancellation fee without hesitation. $200 was cheaper than being trapped in a vehicle with 9 angry people who thought I owed them. Second, I arranged a private sedan just for myself. Pickup at 2:30. Airport direct to the villa. No detours. No quick stops. No negotiations in a parking lot while my mother cried and Talia shouted and Derek asked if we could swing by a liquor store. Then I called my credit card company. There was already a strange tension in my stomach by then, some instinctive sense that this wasn't over, that people who felt entitled enough to ambush me at a gate were not going to suddenly become respectful once they landed in another country. The representative came on the line, cheerful and brisk. I explained that I was traveling internationally and needed a temporary security note on my account. Any charges from Cabo not made by me directly, I said, should require verbal verification. Of course, she said, we can add that. I thanked her and hung up. Then I stood there for a moment, phone in my hand, staring at my reflection in the frosted glass doors of the lounge. I looked composed, more composed than I felt. My hair was still neat, my blouse still crisp, my face calm. But inside, I felt like I had just kicked open a locked door in my own life and hadn't yet seen what was waiting on the other side. The woman at the lounge desk smiled when I stepped up. Welcome, she said. Just you today? I almost laughed. Just me. She scanned my card. Go right in. I walked through the doors and the sound changed instantly. The airport chaos dropped away behind me, replaced by soft music, low conversation, silverware clinking against plates, the hiss of an espresso machine, leather chairs, warm lighting, the smell of coffee and actual food instead of terminal grease and sugar. It was absurd how emotional that transition felt, like stepping out of a storm I hadn't realized I was already in. I found a chair by the window overlooking the runway, set down my bag, and finally let myself breathe all the way in. Then my phone lit up. Mom, declined. Dad, declined. Talia, declined. 3 texts from Talia in under a minute. Come back right now. You are making this worse. Derek's phone is dead and this is all your fault somehow. That last one was so ridiculous I actually laughed. Then more messages. My mother begging me not to humiliate her. My father demanding I act like part of this family. Talia switching between rage and disbelief so quickly the text read like emotional whiplash. One from Kayla somehow. Didn't realize you were like this. Yikes. Blocked. Then Nolan. Seriously? You couldn't just be cool for 1 week? Blocked. I turned on Do Not Disturb. Set the phone face down. And ordered myself a real breakfast. An omelet, fruit, coffee, toast. Nothing revolutionary. But every bite felt weirdly defiant because I was eating in peace while the rest of them sat outside stewing in the consequences of a plan they had built around my compliance. For the next 3 hours, I did something I honestly hadn't expected to be able to do. I worked. I answered emails, reviewed a client document, adjusted a forecast deck, took 1 meeting with my camera off and my voice perfectly steady while, somewhere outside those lounge doors, my family continued disintegrating over a problem they had created entirely on their own. Every so often, I checked my phone. More missed calls, more messages. My mother's tears turned into guilt. My father's commands turned into ultimatums. Talia's rage became performance. At one point, Trevor, no, Nolan, I still barely cared, sent a message that simply read, "Your sister is losing it." I stared at it for a second, then locked my phone again. 3 hours later, they called final boarding. I packed up slowly, slid my laptop away, picked up my bag, and walked out of the lounge. The first thing I saw was Talia. Her mascara had started to smudge. Her jaw was tight. Her posture had that rigid, vibrating stillness she got when she was trying not to scream in public and resented the world for making her wait. My mother looked wilted. My father looked furious. The extra friends looked like they'd accidentally joined a cult retreat and only now realized there had been a misunderstanding. Talia saw me and gave a brittle little laugh. "Well," she said loudly, "look who finally decided to show up." I didn't answer. I just stepped forward, handed my boarding pass to the gate agent, and let her scan it. She smiled. "Have a great flight," I smiled back. "Planning to." Then I walked down the jet bridge. Behind me, I heard Talia's voice spike. She was in that lounge the whole time. 3 hours, while we were out here. There were plenty of seats outside, plenty of food options, plenty of ways for adults to manage an airport delay without transforming it into persecution. But as usual, that wasn't the point. The point was that I had denied them access to me. That always felt harsher to them than the actual logistical inconvenience. I kept walking. At the aircraft door, the flight attendant greeted me warmly. "Welcome aboard." I glanced at my ticket. Seat 2A. I had upgraded myself to first class when I booked weeks earlier. $300 extra for peace, legroom, and insulation from family drama. Best decision I'd made all month. I settled into my seat, put my bag overhead, and buckled in. The seats around me filled with quiet, self-contained people who had books and headphones and the very appealing habit of minding their own business. Then I heard voices in the aisle. "Wait," Derek said. "You're up here?" I looked back. There he was, half blocking the aisle, staring at me like he'd just discovered gravity was optional for rich people. Behind him, I could see my parents and Talia farther back, inching toward their economy seats, with the dragging misery of people who felt deeply wronged by physics and ticket tiers. "Yes," I said, "I am." Talia pushed past Derek just enough to glare at me. "You're in first class?" "Yes." "While we're crammed in the back?" "You booked economy," I said. "I booked first class. That's generally how airplanes work." My mother appeared a second later, her expression already arranged into that pained softness she used when she thought a stranger might witness my refusal and take her side. "Marina, honey," she said, "couldn't you switch with one of us? Just for the flight?" "No." The answer came out so cleanly it almost startled me. She blinked. "Why not?" "Because I paid for the seat." "We couldn't afford first class," she said quietly. "Then economy is where you belong." Her face fell. Talia made a choked sound of outrage. My father's voice carried from farther back. "Family doesn't hoard comfort while everyone else suffers." I turned my head just enough to answer him. Family also doesn't ambush someone at an airport with uninvited guests and expect a free luxury stay. Yet here we all are. That was when the flight attendant appeared with her professional smile and iron spine. "Excuse me," she said. "I need everyone to clear the aisle and head to their assigned seats." Talia leaned closer to me, lowering her voice. "You are going to regret this." I met her eyes. Probably not. For 1 second, something flickered in her face. Not guilt. Not even real shock. Just disbelief that intimidation no longer worked the way it used to. Then the flight attendant gently guided them backward, and the aisle cleared. I put on my noise-canceling headphones, opened my book, and did not look back again. The flight itself was glorious in the pettiest, most healing way imaginable. Warm towel, real silverware, a meal served on an actual plate. Quiet. No elbows in my ribs, no family commentary, no being drafted into logistics. For 3 hours, I existed in a contained little pocket of peace, while the consequences of other people's entitlement rattled around somewhere behind me in basic economy. I ate grilled salmon with asparagus, watched half a movie, closed my eyes, and when we landed in San Jose del Cabo, I stayed in my seat until the aisle cleared enough for me to walk off without being trapped in a forced reunion. First class deplaned quickly. Immigration was smooth. My carry-on rolled easily behind me, and for a brief stretch of time, stepping out into the warm Mexican air, I felt almost light. Then I turned my phone back on. 23 new messages. "Talia, we've been at baggage claim for 45 minutes. Where are you?" "Dad, the transport is waiting. Answer your phone." "Mom, please stop this. Everyone is tired and confused." "Nolan, yo, you seriously vanished?" I glanced at the time. 2:45 p.m. My driver was already waiting in the pickup zone with a small sign that read, "M. Hale." I typed one reply. "I arranged my own transportation. See you at the villa." The responses came instantly. "Talia, what?" "Dad, get back here right now." "Mom, Marina, please." I locked the screen, walked to the car, and let the driver take my bag. The sedan was cool, quiet, and smelled faintly like leather and citrus. I slid into the back seat, watched the airport disappear behind us, and for the first time all day, let myself imagine the villa in full. Ocean view, pool, silence. A week I had paid for, a week I intended to keep. The property was even better in person. White walls washed gold by late afternoon sun. Tile roof, courtyard fountain, massive windows opening toward the ocean. The kind of place that made you unclench on sight. I used the lockbox code the manager had sent me, stepped inside, and stood for one long moment in the cool, clean quiet. Fresh linens, ocean air, no shouting, no demands, no one asking what I had stocked in the fridge or whether I could just make it work. I went upstairs, claimed the master suite, unpacked, showered, and changed into clean clothes. Then I went downstairs, made myself something simple to eat, and took it outside to the pool deck. The sky was turning orange. The water was glowing. The ocean beyond the property line looked calm enough to lie to. I had barely taken 3 bites when my phone buzzed. It was the property manager. "A group of 8 has arrived at the gate claiming they're with your reservation. They do not have the access code and are becoming agitated. Security is requesting guidance." I set down my fork, then typed back. "Only I am authorized for entry. Do not give access to anyone else. If they continue causing problems, remove them from the property." She replied almost immediately. "Understood. We can also provide nearby hotel recommendations if you'd like." I stared at that for a second. Even she was being more generous to them than they had been to me. That would be very kind of you, I wrote. Then another message came in. Security also wants you to know one member of the group just called the guard a power-tripping mall cop, and another tried to slip cash through the window. Hotels are limited tonight due to a regional wedding event. Most nearby availability is expensive or far inland. I almost laughed. Of course they had arrived with no real plan and immediately tried arrogance, insult, and bribery. Not my problem to solve, I replied. Then I set the phone down, picked up my dinner, and kept eating. But peace with my family never lasted more than a few minutes once they realized I meant what I said. My phone rang. Talia. I let it ring twice, then answered and put it on speaker. What did you do? She screamed. I leaned back in the chair and looked out at the ocean. I had dinner. You? The villa won't let us in. Security is here. They're threatening to call the police. That's unfortunate. Fix it, Marina. There's nothing to fix. You locked us out. I enforced the reservation. You are insane. No, I said calmly. I'm prepared. I could hear voices behind her, my mother crying, Derek swearing under his breath, someone loudly asking what they were supposed to do now. Then my mother's voice cut through, thin and wet and trembling. Please, Marina, please, just for tonight. I closed my eyes for a second. There it was again. The old pull, the old script. Be bigger, be kinder, absorb the cost. Rescue the people who would never do the same for you. I opened my eyes. You're not stranded in the desert, I said. You're at the gate of a private property in a resort area. There are hotels. There are concierges. There are apps. Figure it out. Everything is booked, Talia snapped. The closest room we found is 40 minutes away and $400 a night. Then you should have planned before you flew here. My father's voice roared in the background. You knew we couldn't afford that. Then maybe, I said, you shouldn't have built a vacation plan around access to something that wasn't yours. For a second, nobody spoke. Then Talia's voice cracked into pure fury. I will never forgive you for this. I looked at the darkening water beyond the patio. Okay. And I hung up. I blocked all of them after that. My mother, my father, Talia, Derek, even Kayla, just in case she decided to reinvent herself as a peace envoy with contour and bad intentions. For the next hour, new numbers kept appearing anyway. Voice memos, paragraphs, threats dressed up as heartbreak. One blurry video from Talia showing the group standing outside the gate looking exhausted and furious, as if the visual evidence of their own terrible planning was supposed to melt me. I saved it. Then I blocked that number too. Around 11 that night, the property manager texted again. Your family has left the property. Security escorted them back to the main gate. They eventually split up. Your parents found a hotel inland. The others are in separate accommodations. Also, several of them asked me to pass along some colorful opinions. I did not. Would you like the security footage emailed to you? I stared at the screen for a second, then typed back. Yes, please send it. Documentation purposes. Her reply came almost immediately. Done. Enjoy your evening. Documentation purposes. That phrase settled into me in a strange way. Because until then, the whole situation had still felt like family chaos. Humiliating, expensive, infuriating, but still somehow sitting inside the realm of emotional dysfunction. Documentation changed the category. Documentation made it real. Documentation said, this happened, these people did this, and if they try to rewrite it later, you will not have to rely on memory alone. I slept like a different person that night. Not because everything was solved, not because I wasn't angry, but because for the first time in years, I had chosen not to rescue them. And the sky hadn't fallen. The next morning, sunlight woke me through gauzy white curtains and the distant hush of the ocean. For a few soft, disorienting seconds, I forgot where I was. Then I remembered. Cabo, the villa, the fight, the gate, the words I had finally said and refused to take back. I rolled over, checked my phone, and immediately found that Talia had apparently located a computer sometime during the night and written me what could only be described as a manifesto. 5,000 words. No greeting. No formatting. Just rage. I was selfish, cruel, emotionally broken, jealous of her ability to have friends, a narcissist, a control freak, a miserable person who hated seeing other people happy. She accused me of ruining our parents' anniversary, humiliating her boyfriend, traumatizing mom, making them sleep in a rat-infested dump, and acting like some psycho landlord instead of a sister. I read the whole thing once, not because I enjoyed it, because I wanted to understand exactly how far she was willing to twist reality when consequences finally found her. Then I saved it. Screenshots. PDF. Backed up to cloud. By 10 in the morning, I had a folder on my laptop labeled Documentation. Inside it, the rental contract, screenshots of the family group chat, the property manager's messages, the security note, the airport texts, Talia's overnight essay, the gate footage, timestamps, names, dates. A neat little archive of entitlement. I sat on the balcony with coffee in my hand and looked out over the water while the file upload bar crawled across the screen. There was something almost surreal about it. The ocean was blue and endless and clean. The breeze was warm, Palm trees shifted below, and I was organizing evidence against the people who had raised me. A younger version of me would have found that heartbreaking. This version just found it overdue. I made breakfast in the immaculate kitchen. Eggs, fruit, toast, coffee strong enough to feel medicinal, and ate it in silence. No one banged cabinets. No one asked what else I'd bought. No one left wet towels on the floor or made passive-aggressive remarks about room assignments. It was amazing how peaceful a place became when the wrong people weren't in it. Around 10, a text came in from an unknown number. Bro, this is on you. We're not hostile people. Fix it. Jason. Or Nolan. Or whichever one had asked if we were doing a Costco run on my card like he'd been born without shame. I looked at the message, then typed back. You were never my responsibility. A bubble appeared instantly. There were bedbugs. I smiled without humor. That sounds like something you should mention in your review. A long pause. Then, Talia said there was room at the villa. Talia lied, I replied. No answer after that. Blocked. An hour later, another unknown number. This time it was Bry, the selfie woman from the airport, suddenly typing in a tone so falsely polished, it practically smelled expensive. Hi, Marina. I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're all adults here. Can we maybe work something out? We can pay you back. I read it twice, then typed. Adults arrange lodging before boarding international flights. That was the time to work something out. A pause. Then, can't you help just this once? Hotels are insanely expensive. I leaned back in my chair. That phrase again. Just this once. As if my whole life had not been a museum of just this once. Just this once, cover the shortfall. Just this once, let it go. Just this once, don't make a scene. Just this once, be flexible. Every boundary violation in my family came gift-wrapped in the language of rarity, even when it was the oldest pattern in the room. So I wrote back, no, then blocked her too. That afternoon, I went scuba diving. A private charter. 2 tanks. Clear water and reef so bright it looked fictional. Sea turtles. Silver schools of fish breaking around coral. A nurse shark gliding by with all the calm menace of something that knew exactly what it was and didn't have to explain itself to anyone. The instructor was local, funny, professional, and utterly uninterested in my family, which at that point made him one of my favorite people on earth. For 4 straight hours, I existed in salt water and sunlight instead of resentment. When I came back to the villa around 3, sun warm and tired in the good way, there was another message waiting. This one from my father. Not a text. An email. Subject line. This ends now. Of course it was. I opened it at the kitchen island while still barefoot and half damp from the shower. Marina, this behavior stops today. You will call the property manager and authorize entry for your mother, your sister, and the rest of our group. You will apologize to your mother for humiliating her. You will stop punishing your family over a misunderstanding. We deserve respect and accommodation. Everything you have is because of us. Your education, your opportunities, your career. We made you who you are. You have until 6 p.m. to fix this. If you don't, there will be consequences. Dad, I read it once, then again. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was so perfectly him. Even now, even after the airport, the gate, the obvious reality that I was not budging, he still believed authority was a lever he could pull hard enough to reset me into obedience. I sat down with my laptop and replied, Dad, everything I have is because I worked for it. You and Mom provided food and housing while I was a minor, which is what parents are legally and morally supposed to do. After that, I paid my own way. Scholarships, loans, work, long hours, promotions. The career you keep trying to take credit for was built by me. The villa is in my name. I paid for it. I set the occupancy limits. I confirmed the guest restrictions. Those rules stand. You have until 6 p.m. to accept reality. If you don't, the only consequence will be continued disappointment on your end. Marina. I hit send. Then I went outside and floated in the pool under the afternoon sun while my father absorbed the fact that I had just used his language back at him and stripped it of all its force. At 5:47 p.m., my phone rang. Mom. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. She was sobbing before I could say hello. Not delicate tears, full body crying, the kind meant to fill all available emotional space. I waited. Eventually she managed, How could you do this to me on my anniversary? I looked out across the water. I paid for your anniversary trip, Mom. A sharp inhale. We just wanted to celebrate together. No, I said. Talia wanted to turn my gift into a free group vacation, and you helped her do it. That is not fair. It's exact. You're being cruel. I'm being consistent. She made a choking sound, like consistency was somehow more violent than what they had done. If you don't let us in, she whispered, I'll never speak to you again. The line hung between us. A threat, technically. But mostly it sounded like an offer she thought had more value than it did. That's your choice, I said. It won't change mine. She hung up on me. I set the phone down gently. Then I made dinner. Pan-seared mahi-mahi, lime butter, grilled vegetables, sparkling water with ice and sliced citrus, sunset bleeding across the horizon in absurd shades of gold and pink, like the universe had zero interest in matching the emotional tone of my week. And that was the strange thing. The world kept being beautiful. Even while my family was furious. Even while my mother cried. Even while my father sent threats and Talia spun herself into a martyr narrative large enough to blot out the truth. The sun still set. The ocean still moved. The villa still felt like peace. The next 5 days unfolded almost exactly the way I had hoped the trip might before everyone else got involved. Morning swims, long breakfasts, books by the pool, dinners out, one whale-watching tour, another dive. Afternoon naps so deep and dreamless they felt medicinal. Every now and then, a new number would slip through. A stray message, a fresh guilt attempt, a performative apology that dissolved into blame by line 3. I blocked them all with increasing efficiency. By day 3, I had almost convinced myself the worst of it was over. Then my phone buzzed with an alert from my credit card company. Unusual activity detected. Authorization required. My whole body went cold. I opened it immediately. There had been attempted charges totaling $7,200 from a hotel in San Jose del Cabo. 4 rooms, 3 nights. The message asked whether I had authorized the booking or provided my card information to another party traveling with me. For a second, I just stared. Then I called the fraud department so fast I nearly misdialed. A representative answered and verified the activity. The hotel reported that a family member attempted to make the reservation using your card details, she said. Because you placed a security note on the account, we requested verbal confirmation. The caller disconnected. I closed my eyes. I knew instantly who it was. 2 years earlier, Talia had borrowed my card for a family dinner after forgetting her wallet. I had texted her the details to hold the reservation while I was in a meeting. She must have saved them. Of course she had. That charge was not authorized, I said. My voice sounded so calm it almost frightened me. Flag it as fraud. Permanently decline any related charges. I want a new card number issued immediately. Of course, the representative said. Would you also like an incident report for your records? Yes, I said. Email me everything. When I hung up, the villa felt briefly different around me. Still beautiful. Still quiet. But altered. Like the air itself had sharpened. Because this wasn't just family manipulation anymore. This wasn't just entitlement or emotional blackmail or a ruined trip. This was attempted fraud. Real. Documented. Time-stamped. The sort of thing people say didn't happen later when they think they can still bully you emotionally if you let them keep the facts blurry. I opened my laptop, created a second folder, legal documentation. Then I added the fraud alert the moment it arrived. A few minutes later, I texted the property manager. Did my family attempt to use my name or reservation status to book rooms nearby? She replied 5 minutes later. Yes. The hotel contacted us because the guests mentioned staying at our villa and wanted a reference. We declined to comment. I documented the call. I can forward that if useful. I stared at the message, then typed back. Please do. A minute later, it was in my inbox. Another file. Another timestamp. Another clean little proof point. That evening, an unknown number called. Against my better judgment, I answered. Talia. Her voice was shaky in a way I had never heard before. Not soft. Not remorseful. Just unstable. How did you get this number? I asked. I borrowed someone's phone. Of course you did. Silence. Then, I'm sorry about the card thing. I didn't speak. She kept going, words rushing now. I thought you'd calm down by then. I thought if I booked the rooms and explained later, you'd get over it. I leaned against the kitchen counter. You used my card without permission. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. We're family. There it was. The sentence they all reached for whenever they needed to erase the line between love and access. I laughed once, flat. No, I said. What you did has a name, and it isn't family. She inhaled sharply. I was going to pay you back. With what money, Talia? Silence, then quieter. I just needed help. I looked around the silent villa, the order, the light, the clean glass doors opening toward the sea, and felt something inside me settle for good. There were 100 moments before the airport where help could have been requested honestly, I said. You didn't want help. You wanted permission without having to ask. Then you wanted control without having to earn it. And now you want forgiveness without having to face what you actually did. That's not fair. It's exact. Another silence. Then I said very clearly, if you ever use my information again for anything, I will file a police report. She inhaled like I had struck her. You wouldn't. I ended the call. Then added the time, date, and summary to the folder. By then I knew. This wasn't ending with distance alone. This wasn't the kind of family drama that dissolved after everyone got home and had time to rewrite themselves into the injured party. This had crossed into something else. Something paper trail real. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't thinking about how to smooth it over. I was thinking about how to make sure it never happened again. By Sunday morning, the villa looked untouched. No broken glasses. No sand tracked through the hallway. No damp towels heaped on furniture. No half-empty bottles lining the counter. No noise complaints. No stains. No evidence that my family had come within 50 feet of the life I had built for myself, except for what was stored neatly in folders on my laptop. I packed slowly. Not because I was reluctant to leave Cabo, though I was. Because I had the strange, humming awareness that the trip itself was ending. But the real fallout was only beginning. I folded clothes into my carry-on, zipped compartments, checked chargers, and did one final scan of the room. The balcony doors were open. Warm air drifted through the suite. Down below, the pool flashed in the morning light like nothing ugly had ever happened near it. At 11 sharp, the property manager arrived for the walkthrough. She was exactly the same as she had sounded on the phone all week, efficient, composed, and blessedly uninterested in theatrical family dynamics. We moved through the villa together, room by room. She took photos of the kitchen, the bathrooms, the bedrooms, the patio. Everything was pristine. No issues at all, she said. Your deposit will be refunded in full within 5 business days. Thank you, I said. And thank you for how you handled everything else. A small knowing smile touched her mouth. We see more of that than you'd think. I'm not sure whether that's comforting or horrifying. A little of both, she said. Then her expression shifted. There is one additional matter. I felt my shoulders tighten. She turned her tablet toward me and tapped the screen. Security footage. Night vision. Timestamp in the corner. 10:17 p.m. the first night. The side gate. I watched my father, Frank Hale, 61 years old, retired, perpetually convinced the universe owed him obedience, pick up a rock and strike the lock mechanism. Once. Twice. Then I saw Talia yanking at the gate, shoulders rigid with fury, while Derek hovered nearby in the useless posture of a man who wants credit for participating without risking actual accountability. The footage had no audio, but it didn't need any. The intent was clear. Forced entry. My father literally trying to break his way into a property I had rented and explicitly denied him access to. I stared at the screen for a long, flat second, then looked at the manager. The repair cost? $800, she said. We can bill the card on file, or if you prefer, I can send the invoice elsewhere. I almost laughed. Of course. Of course, even this would come back through me first. Because the reservation was in my name. Because I was the responsible one. Because damage done by other people still found my desk before it found theirs. Bill me, I said. She hesitated. Are you sure? Yes, I'll recover it from him myself. She gave a short nod. I'll email you the invoice and attach the footage. Please do. And for what it's worth, she added gently, you handled this correctly. That surprised me enough to look up. She continued, people like that count on discomfort. They assume other people would rather absorb the violation than enforce the boundary. Once they learn that doesn't work, they usually call it cruelty. For one brief second, I almost told her everything. Not just the airport and the gate and the fraud attempt. The years, the patterns, the slow erosion that happens when your role in a family becomes so fixed that your humanity starts to seem optional. But I didn't need to. She already understood enough. Thank you, I said again. And I meant it. The drive back to the airport was calm. I returned the rental car, cleared security, found a quiet cafe, and bought breakfast I barely tasted. I was halfway through my coffee when my phone buzzed from an unknown number. I knew before I answered that it would be Talia. It was. Her voice sounded smaller than usual, but not smaller in the way of humility. Smaller in the way of someone who has burned through several strategies and now isn't sure which version of herself might still work. We're at the airport too, she said. Okay. That single word seemed to offend her. That's it? Just okay? I looked out at the runway. What exactly are you hoping for here? A pause. Then, sharp again, maybe that you feel bad. Maybe that you realize you ruined everything. I let that sit. Then I said, I had a fantastic week. She exhaled hard, almost a laugh, almost a sob. You spent your vacation alone. Yes. That's pathetic. No, I said, it was peaceful. Silence. Then she tried a different angle. Mom hasn't stopped crying. My gaze stayed on the glass. Mom cries every time consequences arrive. That is so messed up. It's observant. You really think you did nothing wrong? That question almost got a real smile out of me, because it revealed the whole machine in one line. Not, do you think what happened got out of hand? Not, do you think everyone made mistakes? Not even, do you think this could have been handled differently? Number, do you think you did nothing wrong? As if my crime was refusing to absorb what they had done. I think, I said slowly, that you brought 5 extra people onto a trip you didn't pay for, told them I would house them, ambushed me in public, tried to force access to a gated property, and then used my credit card information without permission. That's what I think. Her breathing changed. A tiny hitch. Then too fast. I said I was sorry. No, you said you were desperate. That's the same thing. No, I said, it really isn't. The line went quiet. Then she dropped the one word they all always reached for when logic failed. We're family. This time I didn't even feel anger. Just a kind of exhausted clarity. Family asks, I said. Family respects the answer. Family does not lie, manipulate, break things, and steal because they think the label makes consent optional. That's dramatic. Breaking into property and attempting card fraud are actually the opposite of dramatic. They're specific. I ended the call before she could answer. Then I blocked that number too. The flight home was uneventful. First class again. A decent meal. A forgettable movie. I slept for most of it and woke with the odd floating sensation people get after a trip where something internal has changed more than the scenery. When I landed in Denver, there were 3 voicemails waiting. I deleted them all without listening. The first 2 weeks after I got home were almost peaceful. Not emotionally peaceful. More like the eye of a storm after impact, when debris is still drifting down and your body hasn't fully decided whether to collapse or get practical. I chose practical. The property manager emailed the damage invoice exactly as promised. Property damage claim, Villa Rosa. Incident date, October 25th, 2024. Responsible party, Frank Hale. Damage, forced entry attempt on South Gate access panel. Repair cost, $800. Evidence, security footage attached. Paid by Marina Hale, reservation holder. I saved it to the folder. Then I created subfolders. Trip contracts, messages, fraud attempt, property damage, transport cancellation. It sounds clinical when I say it now, but that structure mattered. Because structure is how you stop gaslighting from breathing. When things are documented, organized, cross-referenced, and time-stamped, they become harder to twist into misunderstandings. 3 days later, my father called from a new number. I answered mostly because curiosity got the better of me. "You paid $800 for a gate lock," he said. No hello, no preamble, just accusation. "I did," I said, "and you're going to reimburse me." He laughed once, ugly and short. "That was your fault. You locked us out. I enforced the rental agreement. You created the situation." "No," I said. "You created the situation when you showed up with unauthorized guests and then tried to break into private property like the rules didn't apply to you." His breathing roughened. "We're not paying that." I leaned back in my chair. At that point, I was home, sitting at my own dining table with my laptop open and the afternoon light hitting the wood floor in soft bands. There was something surreal about hearing his outrage through the phone while my apartment remained perfectly still around me. "Then I'll recover it another way," I said. "What does that mean?" "It means small claims court exists for a reason." The silence on the line was immediate. Then, "You smug little—" I hung up. But the thing that kept circling in my mind wasn't even the gate. It was the fraud attempt. Because a broken lock was dramatic, obvious, even stupid. The card attempt was different, quiet, intentional, useful. It was the kind of violation people repeat if they think there will be no cost beyond a tense conversation and some family outrage. So I called an attorney friend from work. Not because I planned some grand revenge fantasy, because I wanted to know what reality looked like when stripped of family mythology. I laid it out for him plainly. Unauthorized. Attempted credit card charge. $7,200. Security flag prevented it. Documented incident report. Property damage invoice. $800 caused by my father, charged to me due to reservation liability. Cancellation fee for the unauthorized group transport. $200. All in writing. All time-stamped. He listened, then said, "You've got enough for small claims, especially on the actual out-of-pocket costs. The fraud attempt matters even if the charge didn't go through. It supports the pattern. The property damage is straightforward if you paid it. The cancellation fee, too. If your goal is drawing a legal line, you can do that." A legal line. That phrase stayed with me all night, because that was what this really was. Not vengeance, not escalation for fun. A line, clear, documented, formal, something stronger than my voice saying no over a phone while they all waited for me to backslide. So I opened my laptop, pulled up the county small claims portal, and started drafting. Plaintiff, Marina Hale. Defendants, Talia Hale, Frank Hale. Summary of damages: $800 paid by plaintiff for repair of property damage caused by defendant Frank Hale during forced entry attempt at third-party rental property. $200 cancellation fee paid by plaintiff for unauthorized group transport, booked under plaintiff's travel arrangements. Filing fee, and court costs. I also included the attempted fraud by Talia as supporting conduct, even though the charge had been successfully blocked. Not because I expected the full hotel amount to be awarded, because I wanted it on the record. I attached everything. Fraud report, texts, property invoice, email from the manager, transport cancellation confirmation, screenshots from the gate situation, the footage, even Talia's midnight essay, because buried inside it were admissions she probably hadn't realized she was making. When the final number appeared on the filing screen, it looked almost absurdly small compared to the emotional scale of what had happened. Just over $1,000. Not life-changing, not devastating, but that had never been the point. The point was to make one thing brutally clear. You do not get to treat me like an open account and call it family. I paid the filing fee. Then I arranged service through a process server because I knew if the papers just showed up informally, they'd try some version of "we never received them." I wanted no loopholes, no drama. Just records. A week later, the papers were delivered. I know this because Talia called from yet another new number in a fury so bright, it practically came through the speaker as heat. "You're suing us?" she screamed. "I filed a claim for documented damages," I said. "You sued your own family over one trip?" I looked at the folder open on my screen. "One trip?" I said softly. Interesting way to describe attempted fraud, property damage, and financial liability. "This is insane." No, this is organized. "You are unbelievable. I've actually been very consistent." I heard her breathing hard, like she was pacing. "This is going on our record." "Yes, people will know. That's how public filings work. You are trying to destroy us." That almost made me laugh. No one in my family had ever recognized a consequence unless it landed hard enough to interrupt their self-image. "I'm not destroying anything," I said. "I'm documenting what you did and asking to be repaid for what it cost me." My father's voice suddenly appeared in the background, loud and furious. "Put me on." Then he was there. "You think you're teaching us some lesson?" "No," I said. "I think I'm done subsidizing yours." "You little ingrate. You can bring that energy to court." He started shouting. I ended the call. And for the first time since Cabo, I felt something close to peace again. Because once the legal machinery was moving, the whole emotional circus mattered less. They could cry, rage, call me cruel, call me cold, call me ungrateful. None of it changed the documents. None of it changed the dates. None of it changed the footage. And none of it changed the fact that for the first time in my life, I had chosen a system with rules over a family that only believed in rules when they benefited from them. They never showed up. That was the part that surprised me the least. For all the noise, all the outrage, all the threats about fighting this and not letting it stand, when the court date actually arrived, neither Talia nor my father appeared. No lawyer, no explanation, no attempt to argue their side. Nothing, just absence. The judge glanced at the file, confirmed service had been completed properly, reviewed the documentation, and issued a default judgment in my favor. $1,125 plus interest. It was almost anticlimactic. No dramatic speeches. No final confrontation. No emotional reckoning in a courtroom where someone finally admitted they were wrong. Just paperwork being acknowledged as reality. But that was exactly what I wanted. Because paper doesn't care about feelings. It doesn't respond to guilt. It doesn't fold under tears. It just records what happened and moves forward. The judgment became part of the public record, which meant something far more important than the amount itself. It meant that if anyone ever pulled a credit check, ran a background search, or looked into financial history, there would be a line. A trace. A consequence. Not something I had whispered in private. Something stamped, dated, and filed. They had 90 days to pay before I could escalate to wage garnishment. I didn't need the money. I never had. But I needed the line. And now it existed. The silence that followed was clean. Not peaceful exactly, but clear. No late-night calls. No emotional ambushes. No passive-aggressive messages disguised as concern. Just space. 6 months passed. In that time, I took 4 trips. Iceland, Japan, New Zealand, Peru, each one planned carefully. Each one quiet. Each one mine. No one asking what I had booked. No one assuming access. No one treating my effort like a shared resource they could draw from without asking. It was the first time in my adult life that travel actually felt like rest instead of logistics wrapped in obligation. Sometimes in the middle of those trips, I would catch myself waiting for the disruption, for the call, for the demand, for the moment where I would have to stop what I was doing and manage someone else's chaos. It never came, and slowly my body stopped expecting it. The first message arrived on a random Tuesday afternoon. Unknown number. 3 words. "We miss you." I stared at the screen for a long time. It was my mother. I didn't need her name attached to it to know. The grammar was too careful, the tone too soft. Talia would have added something sharp, something passive-aggressive, something designed to provoke. My mother preferred gentler weapons. I leaned back in my chair and let the silence stretch. There was a version of me, a very old version, that would have read those 3 words and felt immediate guilt, would have started filling in the blanks. Maybe they've changed. Maybe they understand now. Maybe this is the beginning of something better. But that version of me had spent years confusing silence for growth and apologies for accountability. So instead I asked myself one simple question. What exactly do they miss? Not me. Not really. Because if they missed me, they would have respected me when I said no. They would have asked instead of assumed. They would have apologized without deflecting. They would have acknowledged what actually happened instead of rewriting it as a misunderstanding. No, they didn't miss me. They missed access. They missed convenience. They missed the version of me that absorbed cost, solved problems, and made everything easier without asking for anything in return. They missed the system, not the person. Once I saw that clearly, the reply became obvious. I typed, "You miss my money. There's a difference." I stared at it for one more second. Then I hit send. No typing bubble appeared. No follow-up message. No attempt to argue. Just silence. And then I blocked that number too. A few weeks later, I received confirmation that the judgment had been paid. No note. No apology. Just the transfer. Exactly what I expected. Because even when forced into accountability, my family never learned how to process responsibility emotionally. They only understood consequences when they were enforced externally. And that was fine. I wasn't looking for growth anymore. I was looking for distance. Sometimes people ask me if I regret it, if it was worth it, if I would have done things differently knowing how it all ended. I usually answer honestly, no, because what I lost wasn't a healthy family. It wasn't mutual respect. It wasn't love that could survive a boundary. What I lost was a system where my value was measured by how much I gave up. And what I gained was something I hadn't realized I was missing until I had it. Control, peace, choice. The ability to look at a situation and decide whether I wanted to be part of it without fear of emotional retaliation. The ability to say no and have that no stand. The last time I thought about that night at the gate in Cabo, it wasn't with anger. It was with clarity. 8 people standing outside a locked entrance, demanding access to something they had never been invited into, calling it unfair, calling it cruel, calling it wrong. Because for the first time, the door didn't open. And the truth is, the door had never been the problem. The expectation that it always would was.